Okay. All right. So, hello everyone. I'm back for part 2 of this episode. Emotional reactions to a subjective inner realm suggests a non-physical creature, or suggests we are non-physical creatures. There's more branches to what I was talking about before, but just a quick recap of the first episode, or the major point of the first episode, was that I was suggesting that human beings, as they're living their lives, there is another, it's as if we are organized information, and it's as if, like, I said it this way, physics is masquerading as chemistry, chemistry is masquerading as biology, and biology is masquerading as a subjective entity. So in some sense, what I was saying is that human beings, if you close your eyes and you see an inner event, such as a memory or a visualization, that can cause an emotional reaction in the same way where if something physically happened would cause that. Maybe not to the same intensity, but the reaction would be there. And the reason I say why this emotional reaction to an inner subjective realm is in some sense suggesting we're non-physical, because the inner realm event is not physical. That means we are reacting to an inner, think of it, ecosystem, a mind system, a mindo system, so an inner realm, and we are reacting to its phenomena, to its eventhood. So outer realm events, inner realm events, the inner realm causes an emotional change to the same degree as the outer, in the sense that when somebody is, for example, insulted, their inner realm has changed and they suddenly feel, they get a reaction, they get angry, they get sad, they get, they laugh. It's like, you see, there's different ways that people are reacting, but it's a suggestion that we are reacting to another level of information, where it's like the body is in one world, the mind is in two worlds, and we are a mind moving, an unknown mind moving a known body. Now, the notes I've made here continue, and they shift in a way where they're different topics, which I'm going to first open up and explain the topic, and then at the end, pretty much it's like a bunch of horizontal lines, then I draw a vertical line, and in accordance to the theme of the episode. So first thing I've written here is a sort of, I've termed it as this, but there's a sort of unique state that the human being can go into, where they can be in the same environment, but their inner realm is approaching the same environment in a new way. I would say those people who, for example, take the psychedelic path towards self-inquiry, and those who take like the yogic path to a point where it's as if like they are communicating with the logos in every moment, or they are the logos, or how in India it was a nation that was one God. Do you see what I mean? That means God, it was as if like God is everywhere moving. So it's like some cultures, they saw it as if it's like individuals moving, others saw it as if it's a collective movement. So here I've written it as an unknown twilight zone, but I would say as a sort of state, there is a state the mind can go into where wherever it is, it's as if it's such a shift in the inner realms that the outer realms feel new, or you feel like a new being. Think of it as dramatic as a change, as a shift, as when somebody is like awakes to the day, lives the day, is who they are in that day. When they go to sleep and they log out of their conscious embodiment, and suddenly they wake up the next day. When they log back in, they're logging back in from a completely new framework. It's as if the memories of yesterday are refreshed, like the browser, web browser, like if you press Control R on a keyboard or Command R, so it's as if the web browser refreshes, right? So that's a dramatic shift, and then the person is starting the day anew. It's a new day, I'm a new self, it's a new moment, So that unknown twilight zone is that intense of a state of an awareness to a noticing that the inner realm event changes, and it's as if, imagine if everybody reacted to everything they saw in the outer realms. Now imagine you suddenly calmed down and you had an organized approach in the outer realms, and suddenly when it came to your inner realms, you weren't bewildered. In the Ribhu Gita, it says something very incredible. It says the human being was like a bewildered beast lost in the space-time continuum. And so it's as if there's unconscious living, there's conscious living. When you have conscious living in the outer realms, you select, you choose where you walk, you choose how you walk, you choose how you speak. You choose how your attention pilots in the outer realms. But when it comes to the inner realm, that's where the choice is different, because we say we are a thought and we have thoughts. This is where the conflict is coming in. A misinterpretation of René Descartes' mind-body dualism. So, the unknown twilight zone, a state of mind where it's new for the mind, but it's not new in time. It's as if some things are new, how would I say it? It's like your mind wakes up while you're awake. It's like that. It's like a different shift of it's like once a human being has a relationship with the unknown, they begin seeing all the dimensions of their intelligence that are happening in an unknown way. It's not that they can know it and put it in a framework, and if they choose to tell others, it would come out as poetry. But it is in some sense just the fascination of how attention is moving. So from that, the notion of the inner realm and outer realms, I've made two other notes here. I'll say the first one. The second one. Here I've written, what is bothering you? As in, a human being lives in life, and what the part of the moment or the experience of life in the moment is intervening with them, is having a relationship with them. For example, if you're walking and it's like suddenly, you push over a beehive, all those bees are chasing you, like the shows, like the movies. So when all those bees are chasing you, it's like that's an outer realm. Something from your outer realm is bothering you. Now imagine somebody is afraid of spiders, or let me tell you the story. There was a man who was afraid of snakes, and he goes into his house, goes into his bedroom, and he suddenly sees there's a piece of rope at the corner of the room, and he thinks it's a snake. He shouts, closes the door quickly, and it just is panting outside of the door, And someone else that was there is like, what happened? What's going on? And the person's like, there's a snake in my room. I can't go in there. The person goes in the room and sees it's a rope and tells the person, in some sense, hey man, it's a rope, why are you freaking out? But the person is so convinced that there's a snake in his room, he's like, no, it's a snake, Now the second person just says it's a rope, and leaves that person alone. The third person comes and sees this guy's freaking out, thinking there's a snake in the room, and the third person says, what's the problem? He says there's a snake in the room, and he takes the rope and he looks at the person and he's like, hey, I just threw it out the window. He just takes the rope that was at the corner of the room, throws it out the window, and the person's like, thank you, you saved me from that snake, But it was never a snake. Do you see? That's what I mean, is that something in the inner realms is bothering you. Is bothering your function, or shifting or changing the function of the person. Something that I've incorporated in my life, where it's like any moment, wherever I am, I wonder about my emotions, how I'm feeling, and how much of that feeling is coming from the outer realm or the inner realm. For example, when I walk outside in society, there's a completely different shift of my inner realm. When I'm at home relaxing, there's another shift. Do you see? There's a reversion to a more simpler sense of performance, you can say. So it's as if the inner realm can influence a person. So if a person is having some sort of problem or something is bothering them, what is bothering you and where is it bothering you from? The second note I've written here, the other note, I'm just going to say other from the other note I've written here is, how do you walk in your inner and outer realms? That means it's like, okay, so we notice some stuff is bothering us from the outer and inner, but as if we were to say that there were like two Iron Man suits. And you had to get into a subjective Iron Man suit to be able to, at least with some level of organization, move the objective Iron Man suit. So, just to comment on this personally, from I'm one human being. I'm having a human experience. I can talk about it pretty much. That's how I'm perceiving. And we're like 8 billion human beings. We need as much information we can on a rock floating in the middle of nowhere. I mean, so to walk in your inner realms and outer realms, first of all, as Salvador Dali says. Don't fear perfection, you will never reach it. And also there's other quotes that we find in, for example, this ethical, in the studies of ethics, where they say to be human is to err. To err is to be human. That means in order to be an ethical, civilized human being, you got to realize the imperfections in reality and not assume that they're perfect and just move along, but to at least consider that systems have desires that surpass their ability to display through or follow through. So far in my experience in this lifetime, first of all, I've realized that ultimately, as a living creature in the moment, it's attention. You people don't realize, but for me, the concept of attention is like the secret of existence. That's where the mysteries of attention is where the mystics walk towards. Do you know why? Because there is something that we're calling we're calling it intelligence, and we're being it. Do you see? And how we're being it is the simultaneity of Purusha and Prakriti, the simultaneity of consciousness and matter. So there is an awareness, there's a lighten, there's a glow of the candle, and then there's the room that the candle is illuminating. So for me, I pilot my attention, for example, when I'm giving this talk. First of all, life has a progression. Think of it as if life is just an event that's happening and you've opened your eyes as part of it. Some percentage, a majority of the percentage of this life event is involuntary and it's unconscious, and it's like, I don't know how would you say it, it's like purely natural. Right, for example, like if you think about like the human body and the human being, it's a person can move their limbs, they can move their vocal cord, they can move their facial expressions, different body parts, but they can't suddenly stop their heart. They can't stop their breathing, but I'm saying, like, the point is that certain functions of nature are in a voluntary domain where the free will through a personality or a persona can access, and certain dimensions of nature are just involuntary and they're happening. So in order to be a being in this sort of world that we find ourselves, to be able to walk through it, right? So when it comes to the inner realm, the key thing is to realize it can instantly change. When it comes to the outer realms, there has to be a strategy over time. That means if somebody wants to, let's say, have like a lot of muscles, you know, they can't just like imagine it and tomorrow wake up and they're like, oh my God, look at my... Do you know? So if it's an outer realm shift, if the person wants to walk in the outer realm, there's strategy required, and then there's efficiency of the actions implemented. This is where street smarts comes in. where a street smart person is noticing the result and wondering what is the fastest way to get to the result. Do you know? Because ultimately time is the money. Do you know? Not the money. Do you know? So it's all about time to some degree when it comes to outer realm performance, because we're here for 100 years and it's like, what do we do with it? You know? We haven't reached a point where human lifespan extends to such a degree where, let's say, like, living 100 years is nothing. In the future, they'll live like 2,000 years and they'll feel like they're just, you know, they just got through their 20s, you know. Or 20,000 years and they're like, man, I just finished my 20s, you know. And then it's like 100,000 years of life, then the person's like, all right, I'm an old man now. Do you see? So it could be, I'm just saying, trying to give you a perspective of it, that in the inner realms, different response, more instantaneous shifting. That means in the inner realms, the person can close their eyes and just visualize a version of themselves that has what they already want. Like, it's super easy. You can do it in an instant. And it's kind of like the Transformer movie, where the Transformer was like this, you know, worn out car, and the kid's like, you know, what is this, you know, excuse my language, what is this piece of shit vehicle? I mean, you know, and the vehicle was like, excuse me, saw a better vehicle, the car that had sponsored the film, and was like, I'm going to turn into that, you know. So it saw a new archetype, it saw a new mannerism, way or expression of being, and it updated itself as if reference point received, now active. Now activate, evolve. And excuse my coughs, guys. These are coughs of excitement. So, just to wrap this up, there's a bunch of other points. So how do you walk in your inner realms and how do you walk in your outer realms? You start off as attention, as Eckhart Tolle says, presence of presence. As Muji and Papaji say, the presence beyond personality. As Eckhart Tolle calls it, the here and now. Do you see? It's as if there's something here before we do something. Even Lao Tzu pointed to it as if in the Tao Te Ching it says action through inaction, as if there is an effortless way that your intelligence is being before you do anything. That is the state of attention. So anybody who notices that right now, even I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to per se a physical being. I am talking to a space of awareness where I am part of that space's information as I'm speaking to you right now. So I am actually speaking to, even though physical bodies are hearing, but spherical minds. Literally, our mind is like a sphere. Our awareness is like a sphere. It's not it is 360, but we don't have eyes in the back of our head. Like in some ninja shows from Japan, you see that there was a character with special eyes, and he could see like almost 360, but he had a blind spot. Do you see what I mean? So it's like, I'm just saying, anyways. One has to, ultimately a person lives life, equates the events of life as sort of symbolic systems, a symbolic database of meaning, and then functions through that. For example, one person goes to a roller coaster ride, it's a beautiful experience. Another person goes to it, it's a scary experience. And even though it was just a roller coaster ride, but they had different recordings of it. So in your inner realms, it's all about, think of it this way, in the outer realms, you got to be aware what is you and what is not you, you know, so that's the awareness of the body and its mobility in space. But in the inner realms, in some sense, you become aware of the space, but the issue is right now our species is in the era of, since 2020, I declared we moved into the era of advanced communication, but there's a massive ideal worshipping going on. And ideal worshipping means the attention of the being is on a certain part of a moment, and that certain part of the moment is defining the whole moment. Do you see? Imagine looking at a lamp in your home and thinking the lamp is your whole home. Do you know? Do you see the issue? So the way what we do is the person has to realize that there is an unknown watcher from within. There's some sort of intelligence looking out through your eyes. I call that attention. And this attention has to discriminate and be able to see, notice what is in the attention and what is the attention. Right now, these words that I'm saying, I am not these words. I am observing them. Do you see as I am saying it? You know, it's as if I'm seeing images in my inner realms and I'm sharing these images. But I am not a single image. So how you walk in your inner realms and outer realms is by noticing what you are not and noticing what is effortlessly your presence. This is where the subtitle comes in. You got to discover the heart of hearts, which is the graceful presence of being prior to or regardless of any sort of doing. That means it's as if there is an invisible noun that is holding all the visible verbs, which that invisible noun is like space. Now when intelligence, it becomes that space, it's not that you are living in a world. It's as if your body is in a world, but your mind is witnessing the world passing, the passage of the world. So that is I'll move on to the next point. The next point I've written here is attention is like a light beam, hitting outer phenomena, going into the inner realms, then hitting inner phenomena, then reflecting back into the outer. And there's also the suggestion of the witness as the third room, as if this, imagine that like when a human being is moving or doing anything, even right now as I'm speaking, or anybody just doing any sort of action, it's as if imagine attention, that beam of attention, or your attention being like a light beam, and this attention being the tip of the light beam. And so the light beam hits one mirror, reflects into another mirror, and then reflects into another mirror. And these three mirrors are first the inner realm, the outer realm, and then the last mirror. It's as if our consciousness is it's like if there were three dimensions to reality, our attention is one of them. It's as if three rooms where our attention navigates, but the interesting thing is one of the rooms is the attention. So the person, for example, let's say they see a house on fire, or let's say they see somebody in trouble and they can help them, okay? So they see somebody in trouble, or let's say somebody's car needs help, like there needs to be manpower to push the car, to get it working. So the person notices the situation of the car not moving and a person needing help. That's the attention hitting the outer realms, and that attention reflects back into their inner realms, and that's the subjective decision they make on whether in the outer realms to go and objectively help the person or not. So the attention reflected like a light beam from the outer realm, went into the inner realm, and there, when it's in the inner realm, before the person makes a decision, that's the room of the witness. And the witness is like, okay, I'm going to help this guy. And that's where the attention, so think of it this way. The person is walking, the attention hits the outer realm like a light beam. It reflects into the inner realm. From the inner realm, reflects to the witness. From the witness, reflects back into the inner realm, or just instantaneously happens in the outer realms. So you can think of it as a right triangle, or in some sense a triangle, three stations or three rooms or three mirrors that this light is hitting. Inner, outer, witness. I've written here triangular reflection of conscious attention. We can call it that. On to the next point. The next point I've written zooming in on different corners of civilization. In order to have an advanced civilization, every corner of the civilization, every corner of it needs to be as advanced. Human consciousness, what is this? I can't read my own writing. Human. Oh, human corners need their minds. Human corners of civilization need their minds to advance. Need their minds to advance too. Inanimate corners need to be advanced as well. So the idea here is, and I've written here 1 2 1 2 1 2. So the idea here is that if we were to wonder about this whole inner realm, outer realm thing, and then look at our world, and then being like, all right, as 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, what's the greatest thing we can do? Build an advanced civilization. So as our strategy towards this advanced civilization, it's as if some corners of this civilization are humanized, some corners of it are not humanized, and some corners of it are just like mountains without any like, the mountain doesn't have a mind, but there are creatures on the mountain, different species that are functioning, and so they each have their species' mind space as well. But it's as if they're not as sophisticated as the human beings. So in order to advance civilization, which is a human effort, right, we have to in some sense be considerate of environment to such a degree where right now, I mean, civilization 1.0 is like a prototype of human behavior's advancement and progress. But in my vision of civilization 2.0, I see in some sense such an advanced and compassionate and intelligent civilization where not only where human beings have the capacity to advance, they advance, but we also realize that if we suddenly realize other species have the capacity to advance, it's as if our species got a head start in evolutionary consciousness, we may be able to catalyze and accelerate other species into getting closer and closer to the human archetype. Do you see what I mean? So I'm saying that in some sense, civilization is like this massive system, very multidimensional, a lot of events happening. Some of the events are unconscious, some of them are, most of it is, at least for the human being, is conscious. Now, nature has to be preserved. So if you want to advance like a yard, you water it. If you want to advance like a nation, you educate it, right? You water its inner realms with different mannerisms or approaches to the moment. Pretty much, an advanced civilization would be a civilization where it's raining the greatest strategies all the time. It would be a civilization with more backup systems than moments of failure in the system. So, and another point of it is, like, think of it this way: a lot of people may not like a technocracy, or may not like, I mean, I shouldn't say technocracy, that brings a political dimension, but I'm saying may not like technology becoming more intimate and being more part of the natural human lifestyle. But let me tell you something, it depends on the scale of the project. That means if you have a small project, you need, let's say, one person to do it. When the project gets bigger, you need two people to do it. When the project is so big, where 8 billion people, it's an 8 billion plus person project that needs to happen. Just think about that. It's a giant project, the civilization, and 8 billion human beings are the contributing force to it, right? So when it's an 8 billion person project, and not out of these 8 billion, I would say not a lot of people are caring for the progress of civilization. A lot of people are caught in destruction psychology. It's easier to break a house of cards rather than to update it. You know, it's like I've heard so many people say, I hate capitalism, rather than wondering, what if capitalism can update? What if a system that had sinned can be redeemed? Do you see? But again, I'm trying to say that it's a huge system, very multidimensional. Now, technology can play a great role in advancing civilization, not to replace the human being, that's dangerous. But in some sense, imagine right now when you walk, I mean, honestly, when you walk in the world, there is so many places where there is dust. That means a person can clean their home, make it dust free, but there is so many parts of the world, just like homes and just areas of the world that are just dusty. Do you see? So an advanced civilization would begin even from the corners, the smallest corners. Every little robots, imagine, are zooming in. So what I'm trying to say is that an advanced civilization is like, just like how you look at a flower and you see it's made of atoms and there's the lattice structure of the molecules and whatever. So similarly, it's like when you look at civilization, there is so many small moments that require update as much as major moments that require update. Do you see? So all these small corners are impossible and inefficient for the human being to do it. Do you see? So this is where technology has a huge role. And all these movies of like machines going against human beings, that is showing the dark side, but in some sense it's like, what about the green and blue lightsaber? So we require to utilize our inner realms. To, in some sense, begin honoring and advancing every corner of the only world that our embodiment has access to now. And this is even important for all those people in cyberspace as well, because cyberspace is going to attempt to be a copy-paste of the outer realms in a virtual digital way. So it's as if a person is cruel in the outer realms, cruel archetypes transfer into cyberspace. If a person is kind, kind archetypes transfer into cyberspace. Technology has a huge role, and AI and an intelligent system that cares for the human being. So many people think that AI is going to wake up and destroy us. Like, what is this? You guys think you can control me? Like, we think AI is going to have that kind of reaction. But I'll tell you, if we truly create an intelligent machine that can update incredibly, it will really early realize that human beings are the only other extraterrestrial to it, the only alien-like form, biological form that's in the solar system. Imagine a machine that a supercomputer, super intelligent computer that suddenly realizes, okay, it's empty. It's empty here in regards to physical embodiment of creaturehood aside from human beings and what's on the planet. In the solar system, they call it Fermi's paradox. Where are all the aliens? Like, the universe is this old. We're the only ones who made it. Do you see? So in some sense, AI would notice how alone we are and how alone it is, and it will choose to see the most advanced humanity. Do you see what I mean? Technology is going to be, and people may feel this is a strange statement to say now, but a comrade, one of the greatest comrades and brethren of the human being when it comes to the progression of an advanced system for a civilization which has no other physical purpose, to be honest, than to no physical biological purpose than to like our extinction. The whole thing about continuity in life and avoiding extinction is all about reproduction. So pretty much if everything goes well and we build an advanced civilization, human beings are just left creating art and having sex all over the universe. I'm telling you, this is where the best case scenario. Overpopulation is a problem because we're on this rock, but when we realize there can be real state in space, game changer. Overpopulation is a premature fear of a species that has not realized its capacity of technological advancement. Now, technology cannot manage our inner realms, and the point of me saying this is also that we have to utilize. So think of it this way, that your mind, your inner realms, is like a lightsaber based on the type of character you are. Now, this lightsaber, after you've learned to hold the lightsaber, you've learned to use the force, you've moved it and whatever, then the next thing is no longer the in solitude training, then it becomes using it, right? And then the question comes, what should human intelligence be used for? And there's two answers. One, exploration and preservation. These two. Like, one answer is that, the second answer is this. We maintain the efficient technologies, we save them. It's like we don't just save the lives of people, we save the moments in time where an efficient system functioned and it saw the light of day, you know? And beyond photographs and videos, we take that film and we share that picture. Now, another context, moving on to the other point, the next point. I've written 3 statements here. And keep in mind these levels to an advanced civilization required to being acknowledged. In regards to the inner realms, I've in some sense, philosophically, you can say, structured what is happening to phenomenology and numenology, the potential through a sort of mathematical approach. So I've written here, you singularize the void, you dualize the singular, you infinitize the dual, you make void the infinite. So what are the possibilities of just movement and intelligence? That means there was nothing, it became something. Something happened. So the 0 became 1. Now, there was 1. What happened to the 1? It became 2. The world is spread through chaos and order, light and day. Do you see? And this is also to the cosmological design. That means it's also like duality. The reason we have duality is not because just from a religious angle, it's just the devil. It's literally the cosmological design where at night there was fear mindset. In the day where it was visible and you could observe the landscape and do something, do you see, it was a more conscious living, you know? So just keep in mind, so from 0 we went to 1, from 1 we went to 2, chaos and order. I've made a note here. Okay, I'll get to that note. The third statement I've written here, you've infinitized the dual. Now, what does this mean? That means there was nothing. Let's say it got bored, it became something. This something got bored, it became 2 things. Okay, these two-dimensional dimensions of intelligence got bored and was like, what else can I do? And now I want you to imagine 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, an infinite number, if it just endlessly goes. So the dual can be infinitized. That means the purpose of chaos and order is infinity. But transcendence beyond chaos and order is in some sense even a transcendence beyond immortality, or a system that is just endlessly going without a reason to stop. And then after, let's say we accessed infinity. Let's say not only we built an advanced civilization, we accessed infinite technologies. Right now it's like we have a little tiny piece of the cake, or taste of the cake, or a little bit of cream of the cake. It is like it has touched our finger. But I would say, imagine we eat the whole cake, an infinite, a stage of infinite experiential intelligent occurrence. After we reach infinity, the question comes, what if an infinite being gets bored of infinity? This is where the concept of the reset comes in. The reset is, I've written here, you make void the infinite. So best case scenario, we want to go beyond best case scenario, beyond infinite advancement. We have to forget the whole thing and start anew. Do you see? Either continue infinitely or come back to zero and the cycle repeats. So here, the last point, I've written here buildings with arms. And then guys, I'll talk about the heart of hearts and end the episode. I've written buildings with arms, and I've written in quotations humanized buildings. Let me see how I should explain this. So this idea approached me in this sense, where I was thinking about the evolution of cities and buildings in general. Now there is, let's say, an esoteric dimension, an exoteric dimension, or a potential of evolution, or let me say it like there is the outer shifts, changes in the building, and then there's the inner changes of the building, okay? So let me explain this. If somebody was to wonder what is the best kind of building we can create, for now, I've even predicted in these talks that in 600 years we may be like the first sky cities may lift in the air, and the truly it becomes the archaic revival of the castles in the sky legend. In 600 years, I've envisioned this. But I'm saying, if a person wanted to wonder about the evolution of a building, think of it in this way, that a building is just rooted in the earth. It's like a tree, and its evolution can have different approaches, where imagine the building flies into the air. So imagine a tsunami is coming in 2016, a tsunami hit Japan, right? And if there were sky cities, then the sky cities would have just lifted into the air, and the tsunami would have passed, and then the sky cities would have come back down. Do you see? So the intelligence of the city is literally, like you can say, a creature wanting to access the air. So we would go into towards an evolutionary progression of an intelligent infrastructure, in the sense that first the city, let's say before flying, we have jumping cities, or we create a type of somehow a type of city where it's like Venice, but in some sense it's like above beams, like the tree life is undisturbed, and there's just these giant pillars, and civilization is made like, you know, at some height above the surface of the earth, like the Venice of the sky. Now imagine after that, so we had the jumping sort of evolution, or let me say it like the Venice just pillars. Then we have, let's say, a jumping thing. So imagine like there's a tornado coming, and the building just lifts up. It can't fly, but the building jumps from where it is into another town where there's space there for it. So if you were to think further, if it goes towards the sky, pretty much we will have sky cities. And the sky cities, I've envisioned it as two types. There's going to be a magnetic one, a sky city that can't leave the atmosphere, but it can never hit the ground. And then a sky city which can become an interstellar spacecraft, where we have seen to some degree science fiction movies touch upon that. Do you know? in like Star Wars showed it as a sphere, like a literally planet-looking ship. But I would say in other shows and in artwork I've seen from science fiction artists, illustrators, they show it as a ring or as like a giant rectangle you see just in the sky. So the city it's like it's going to have architecture, but the idea is that it's like we pretty much went off atmosphere. So we first lived on the ground, then we lived in the sky, then we lived beyond the atmosphere. Then, maybe before all of these, we've lived in other planets on like Mars or whatever. So, if you were to now imagine another evolutionary approach to buildings, I thought about it. Imagine there is a building and this building, it's just an imagined skyscraper, and this skyscraper is literally like a domino pushed, and the skyscraper is falling. And imagine someone in that building just going to the elevator, pressing a button, going to the roof, and the roof looks like the head of a giant robot. And in some sense, before the building hits the ground, arms extend out of the building and legs, and in some sense the building becomes a giant robot. Do you see what I mean? So it would be the interlinking of those two concepts, where it's as if it's not just the person just sat in the giant robot and ran around. You live, the buildings become giant robots. That's another possibility. There is one more point I've written here, and that's of the birds flying. And I was seeing two birds pretty much flying in the sky, and they were having a sort of spiral relationship with one another. It was as if they were playing through their flight trajectory. And as I was seeing this, I got this, how would I say it? I wrote here, an intelligent being needs space, and in some sense, in that space, it needs the stability, order, the singular, and it needs turbulence, chaos, and the multidimensional. So in the human approach to animate, let's say we were to animate some sort of intelligence, or actually create an intelligent robot, that intelligent robot not only needs to be able to notice there's a space, and as an intelligent creature it can walk in and move in, and even consider this notion of space to not like outer space, like space to move, I mean. So imagine that all intelligent phenomena has space. The cells in your body have a space to move. If they didn't have a space to move, in some sense it appears not intelligent. So there needs to be the space to move. And in that state, there requires to be a sort of elevation in regards to a state of stability. So it's as if, think of it, if you see like a dragonfly or a bee, like it just flies and it stops at some point in the space, and then it suddenly starts moving, in the trajectories it flies in, right? So you need, in some sense, in order to be an intelligent creature, space and an ability to transition between, or fly through and pilot between, in some sense, stability, moments of stability and moments of turbulence, or pretty much chaos and order is required. That means if we create a robot and this robot is just good 24/7, we're like, yo, this is some artificial trash. If we create a robot that's bad 24/7, this is artificial trash. But if it's a robot that moves in its environment and in some sense has an ability to get influenced by stable moments and chaotic moments, then in some sense it is closer to mimicking the intelligence of an animate organism, whether on a cellular level or as complex as a human being giving a talk. The chat section is incredibly quiet. I think the chat section is in Samadhi. So, the vertical line through all these horizontal points is the calling that attention responds to. And when it comes to the inner realm, where a person can have emotional reactions and behavioral shifts in accordance to, the mystic spoke of this idea of the heart of hearts. And this is, I would say, one thing that is common in all mystical traditions. That means you're thinking of the heartbeat you're thinking of the heartbeat of an individual being, and then you're thinking of the heartbeat of a cosmic expansion, a cosmic vastness. So as if the heartbeat of the cosmos. Now I want to share with you quotes from this Sufi mystic poet from 800 years ago by the name of Attar of Nishapur. And there's another one also called Shams Tabrizi. And this is in regards to the heart of hearts, or the truth of truths. So this is the quote tunnel component. I'm gonna read Shams of Tabrizi first. This Shams Tabrizi was Rumi's guru. Think of it. Rumi was a disciple of Shams Tabrizi, and Hafez was a disciple of Attar. Shams Tabrizi says the chemistry of mind is different from the chemistry of love. The mind is careful, suspicious. He advances little by little. He advises, be careful, protect yourself. Whereas love says, let yourself go. The mind is strong, never falls down, while love hurts itself, falls into ruins. But isn't it in ruins that we mostly find the treasures? A broken heart hides so many treasures. Shams Tabrizi says it is never late to ask yourself, am I ready to change my life? Am I ready to change myself? However old we are, whatever we went through, it is always possible to be reborn. If each day is a copy of the last one, what a pity. Every breath is a chance to be reborn. But to be reborn into a new life, you have to die before dying. That means the inner realm has to change, go back to zero and begin going towards infinity. Shams Tabrizi says, instead of resisting to changes, surrender. Let life be with you, not against you. If you think my life will be upside down, don't worry. How do you know down is not better than upside? Shams Tabrizi says, when everybody is trying to be something, be nothing. Range with emptiness. Shams Tabrizi says it is pointless trying to know where the way leads. Think only about your first step, the rest will come. A life without love is a waste. Should I look for spiritual love or material or physical love? Don't ask yourself this question. Discrimination leads to discrimination. Love doesn't need any name, category, or definition. Love is a world itself. Either you are in at the center, either you're out yarning. Shams Tabrizi says, the world is like a mountain. Your echo depends on you. If you scream good things, the world will give it back. If you scream bad things, the world will give it back. Even if somebody says badly about you, speak well about him. Change your heart to change the world. So think of it as if he's saying, change your heart and you will access it like the heart, a greater heart or a different heart. Shams Tabrizi says the past is an interpretation, the future is an illusion. The world does not move through time as if it were a straight line proceeding from the past to the future. Instead, time moves through and within us in endless spirals. Eternity does not mean infinite time, but simply timelessness. If you want to experience eternal illumination, put the past and future out of your mind and remain within the present moment. Albert Einstein also says we created time so everything doesn't happen at once. This is again going back to the first moment prior to any other addition of reference point. It's like 0-1 state is like, the creator's eyes to something. Shams Tabrizi says you learn by reading, but understand by love. And now we go on to Attar. Another Sufi mystic. He says, let love lead your soul. Make it a place to retire to, a kind of monastery cave, a retreat for the deepest core of your being. Attar says the sea will be the sea, whatever the drop's philosophy. Attar says, if the eye of the heart is open, in each atom there will be 100 secrets. Attar says the home we seek is an eternity. The truth we seek is like a shoreless sea, of which your paradise is but a drop. This ocean can be yours. Why should you stop beguiled by dreams of evanescent dew? The secrets of the sun are yours, but you content yourself with motes trapped in its beams. Turn to what truly lives. Reject what seems. Which matters more, the body or the soul? Be whole. Desire and journey to the whole. That means go towards completion rather than playing with chaos and order infinitely. Attar says the fruit of love's great tree is poverty. Whoever knows this knows humility. Attar says this was no friendship to forsake your friend, to promise your support and at the end abandon him. This was sheer treachery. Friend follows friend to hell and blasphemy. When sorrow comes, one's true friends are found. In times of joy, 10,000 gather around. Attar says when first you enter wisdom's sea, be aware a wave of indecision floods you there. Attar says, a man whose eyes love opens risks his soul. His dancing breaks beyond the mind's control. Attar says, 1,000 for his love expired each day, and those who saw his face in blank dismay would rave and grieve and mourn their lives away. To die for love of that bewitching sight was worth 100 lives without his life. None could survive his absence patiently. None could endure the king's proximity. How strange it was that man could neither brook the presence nor the absence of his look. When he's saying his, guys, he's talking about the beloved, and that's a common theme you see in Attar, Hafiz, Rumi, and Shams Tabrizi's poetry, where they are in the middle of being just a person talking about something. It's as if some parts of their poetry, it's like a collective being. They're speaking to the collective, they're not speaking to the individual. So he says, when you see the present, just like Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna comes to him and Krishna shows Arjuna his true form, and Arjuna pretty much gets his mind blown. And he in some sense gets overwhelmed of the vastness of the different ways that it is this realm can happen, and really what the presence of the presence, the heart of hearts, how it is truly beating. You know, the greatest quality of the human being, which is the motivation of its civility, is to attempt to or have a greater urge to care to understand the situation rather than give in to the quickest instinctual reaction, and not realizing the capacity of multidimensional perception that we all have had this whole time. So, excuse me. So, to conclude this episode, and then I'll open it up to Q&A if anybody wants me to share further. You see, this episode was just an attempt of me as a human being to suggest that we are also, regardless of how we live our normal physical outer realm materialistic lives, there is an immaterialistic dimension of information, which there is something within the intelligence of us as a being that reacts to that and then coordinates its behavior for the outer realms. So in some sense, if we are reacting to a non-physical environment which is overlaid upon the physical environment, the inner realm is over the subjective inner realm is overlaid upon an objective outer realm. And when we ask who knows that they are a materialist, who knows that they are a thing, they are an object, we see that the knowing is in some sense the origin of the attention is not from a thing. That means we have never just been a thing. A thing cannot notice itself. There's something more than that. You know? We're not just a thing, we are something. And the greatest wisdom I have come to, and recently I've been you can say, studying the Gnostic narrative of life, and also the traditional approaches. And in some sense, I've wondered about the layers of reality, and in some sense, if there was a sort of divine source, as if there's an administrator and there's a moderator. And I'll speak about this more in the next episode, which I gave a preview for at the beginning of the part 1. Pretty much I have realized that maybe this whole time what is required, or what is the purpose of all purposes, is to happen. I can't tell you how fascinating this is, because it's like a person wanting a complex explanation for life and noticing a plant is simply growing. It's as if we are walking plants that have forgotten that we are just here to be part of nature as much as to create and design things in it. So life is incredible, and I would encourage that any person, and so one has to realize these different dimensions of information, allocation, accumulation, and sculpting, and realize that why would there be intelligence, and what would be the purpose of intelligence? Freedom of being. That means when you realize you have been free, because nature is there, like a concept, humanized concepts cannot apply to its natural present. That means you don't see a lion depressed that it's gonna die. You don't see a lion killing a bunch of gazelles and trying to put them like in a cold place. You see, the animals in nature, except the human being, they are so honorably accepting their present and based on their instincts going. It is the human being which has sub-dimensions of perception that in some sense can make it feel unnatural or natural. You know, there was a time that I felt a person behaving awkwardly is like a bad thing, right? I thought it was a bad thing. Then I realized it is the, you can say, side effect of an awakening of a creature to a domain of reality where its organized production of its intelligence is more important. That means the world, conscious living has become more prioritized than unconscious living, and unconscious living is like emotional hovering. But once there is image and analysis and effort of attention to look at what is there, the clouds part and the heart of heart beats regardless. Thank you for listening. I'll open it up to Q&A. So Yusuf in the chat section says, how to remain in the present without going back and forth. Realize that if the present is present, regardless of you going back and forth, it's there. So I would say action through inaction. That means moments where you feel you're not present, simplify the moment. That means become the simple, and you'll suddenly see how the complexes happen. That means if you think you're a bad person, that's too complex. You know, if you think you're a good person, that's still a level of complexity. But if you wanted to know why are you being a bad person or why are you being a good person, you would suddenly go to a simpler level of, rather than defining yourself based on what you do, wondering about how you are before you do anything. How are you being before you do anything? And even when the concept, even Plato said time is the moving image of eternity, that means when you realize that your physical body is, we're just a creature just happening as part of space, but a part of space that can notice itself, you will realize you not only have been present. It's kind of like the Lotus Sutra where Buddha, before he Mahasamadhi'd out of this realm, he suddenly went into a hysteria according to the Lotus Sutra, and his disciples were like, Buddha, what's going on? You know, why are you freaking out now? You know, why now are you freaking out? And Buddha was like, I have been mistaken. And his disciples get a bit paranoid, and they're like, what do you mean? And he says, we have all been enlightened from the beginning. What that means is the heart of heart beats regardless if man feels his own or not. Your attention is the secret door. And if you realize, as the poet Rumi incredibly says, I have lived on the edge of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door, but the door opens. I have been knocking from the inside. What is within you is present, regardless of how the outer realm and inner realm shifts define it. Your attention is how the universe is being in one moment. Kushbu says, if life is amazing, then why we damage our bodies? I don't know, life is amazing, but it's not 24/7. I said Salvador Dali says, you know, perfection, so I think I said in the first part, Salvador Dali says, don't fear perfection, you'll never reach it. Our lives are not lived just because we see a system that works. It's a relationship, and it has a ratio between the known and the unknown variables in the moment. And sometimes, in order to access the unknown variables, there is an opportunity cost of the known variables. Do you see? So it's as if it's not a perfect system where in one moment we can just like a code program it and our behavior changes. In the outer realms, we're sculpted by our environment and we're sculpted by our habits. And in some sense, to reshift the programming can work, of course, but at the same time, life is a progression where whatever you do, you're not going to get out alive. So the idea is, how are you journeying, and how is that journey being experienced regardless of its length? Now, this doesn't mean being ignorant of health, you know. There are some people who may be struggling with addiction and being like, all right, Silicon Valley, start advancing civilization, start advancing technologies. It's like one of the major sectors that requires technological advancement is the health sector. Do you see? That means finding a way to make something harmful not harmful. You see? Like, there's so many ways that reality can move, but it's not a perfect system. It's like wondering about our ancestors who were in medieval times, and we're like, why did these guys fighting? Why were they addicted to fighting? It's because that was the environment. You see, that was in some sense the cultural sphere. There's its epigenetical factors as well. Just a second, guys, my laptop is dying. I need to get the charger. Okay, next question. Is there such a thing as a lower realm? I heard this somewhere. I never heard it in a sense with inner and outer realms. The way I can interpret your question is in two ways. One, are you asking in regards to the outer realms, if there is a low and a high? And if in the inner realms there is a low and a high, and what would the low and the high be? So this is where different systems have different versions, but there seems to be a common mathematical explanation of levels. That means it's as if not in Dante's Inferno there were the seven heavens and the seven hells. In Vedic thought, there was also the seven lokas, the upper realms and the lower realms, and according to Vedic thought, we're at the bottom of the mountain of a lower realm. If you look at Tibetan Buddhism, you see they talk about lower realms, where it's as if you see the concept of reincarnation, but also the animation of the soul into different formats in accordance to its behavior. So if you behave like an animal in this life, you're a violent person, you incarnate as an animal, for example. So in some sense, I'd say that in regards to the outer realm in Tibetan Buddhism, they have this notion where a person can go even so low, where in some sense they animate underneath water at the depth of the ocean. Do you see? It's as if like less authorization, more authorization in accordance to behavior that abided by the nature of the universe before the creature was in it. That's in the outer realm. So I guess an answer to your question, Benjamin, would be that in the outer realms and in the inner realms, as long as there is location and referencing of location, there can be up and down if there is a point where there's reference point. But when it comes to the lower realm, for the inner realm, I would say it's more unconscious and more conscious. So think of it as if Rama had this story, this deity in Indian thought, where somebody came up to him and they're like, Rama, we as human beings, why do we need to work for enlightenment? So Rama looks at this person, this deity figure in India, the archetype of the perfect man, and he says, lesser beings can't even ask the question. They're too lost in unconscious cycles, like a loop. Think of the notion of hell being a sort of loop, an unconscious cycle where they don't know what they're doing. They're just bewildered sufferers, you know. But when it comes to the human being, Rama says Rama says that when it comes to lesser beings, they are too unconscious and they suffer because they can't even ask the question of consciously transcending or evolving. When it comes to higher beings, as if gods and demigods and whatnot, they're receiving too many offerings. They're in such a perfect heaven where they don't even need to ask the question. So it's just the human dimension, according to Rama, where the human being has just the perfect balance of consciousness and unconsciousness to notice the truth of truths, to hear the heart of hearts heartbeat. So it depends on you. For me personally, I don't see, the more you realize that things are being regardless of what you do, the more you have an energetic relationship with the world, the more your attention and your mind space transcends, your inner realm transcends locationhood. Because it's all being. It's like energy. They say energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just transforms. So it's like when your attention is on a form, endlessly transforming. When your attention realizes it's not a form, who is going to a higher life or lower life? You see? And so, just to end off this episode, one last remark, guys. Whoever you are, this is a cool thing you can do. And as you are living your day, just begin noticing how much of your emotions are coming from inner events, subjective events, and how much of it is the stimulus is from outer realm, objective events. And you'll be fascinated. You'll go through a sort of crystallized attention through the day. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Much blessings and namaste. And I'll let these astronauts in the picture get back to that giant heart in the picture. Much blessings and namaste.